This video is made possible by Practical Defense Systems, the best online security training at the lowest prices. You can start your security career today online at pdsclasses.com. Check them out.
Get ready for certified USDA prime gun stuff on the GunGuyTV podcast.
Hi, this is Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for all of your support of GunGuyTV. I'm very grateful for everything you do. Please don't stop. Now, before I get into the interview with Kyle from Mobius Brass, let me remind you that GunGuyTV does need your support. If you'd like to support this podcast and the YouTube channel and video channel, you can do so many different ways. One of the ways you can do it is a way that costs you absolutely nothing. You can use our affiliate links to buy stuff. So if you go to the description of this podcast, you'll find a link to our website at GunGuy.tv. We put a page up there entitled Discounts on Gear. Now, if you don't find the link, you can just go to our website at GunGuy.tv and look for the menu item, Discounts on Gear. It'll take you to where we put all of our affiliate links there. You can get discounts at Caldwell Shooting, Crimson Trace, reloading equipment from Frankfurt Arsenal, safes from Lockdown, Smith & Wesson accessories, Tipton Cleaning, Wheeler Tools, Optics Planet, even Amazon. How about that? In addition, there are other sites that may not give you a discount. They come and go, so there might be a discount sometimes, might not be otherwise, but they do support GunGuyTV with every purchase regardless, and that's Acre Leather, Bullet Safe, Premier Body Armor, RTS Tactical, Second Call Defense, Spartan Armor, LA Police Gear, and more. Those are places you can buy stuff that you might buy otherwise, including, as I said, even Amazon. And whatever you buy there is going to benefit GunGuyTV, and in many cases, you're going to get a discount for your purchase. So check it out. It's in the link in the description that says Discounts on Gear. And if you can't find that, then just go to our website at GunGuy.tv and look for the Discounts on Gear menu item. Now, let's get started with the interview with Mobius Brass. Well, so tell me, Kyle, what's going on with Mobius Brass? You're my favorite brass supplier, by the way. What's happening with you? I don't even know, frankly, and I'd be interested to know how you got into this business.
Well, it's interesting. I always enjoy telling people this story because it kind of happened by accident. So I would say probably about 18 months ago, I got my first, well, actually, let me go further back than that. For any viewers who are listening that don't live in California, there was a proposition that passed in 2016 called Prop 63. Now, when Prop 63 passed, it said that in, I believe it was 2018, July of 2018, any ammo purchases made after that date would have to go through the NICS, not the NICS system, but the DROS system. So you'd have to get a background check. So it was at that point that I decided, okay, I need to get a machine to reload this. I need to roll my own. So I believe it was later that year, probably about November, December of 2016, I bought my first Dillon. So I bought a 650 and I was just using it to load 9. Well, one thing led to another and I'm like, you know what? I need to start loading rifle rounds. So I bought a 1050 in 308. I learned very quickly that if you're loading progressive, so if you're not prepping your brass before you're loading on a progressive, especially with 308, it's tough. So I switched back to single stage for my 308 and I switched the 1050 over to 5.56. So I would say a year later, I got tired of doing the brass prep and I had been to SHOT Show in I believe it was 2019. And I saw the Dillon booth and I was looking around and I noticed that they had a case prep machine, a dedicated case prep machine. It's called the CP2000. I fell in love with it. And they said it would be out April of that year. Well, if anybody is familiar with Dillon, they know that Dillon and their time estimations are charitable, to say the least. So one thing led to another, and it ended up coming out in November. I got one of the first machines to come available, and I loved it. So on the CP2000, it decaps swages. You can put the new Dillon trimmer on there, so you can full length size and trim in one go. So basically, with each stroke of the press, you get a fully a fully prepped piece of brass.
As opposed to having to do one step at a time, which is what I do at my house.
Yep. And I started doing 5.56 brass prep on a Frankfurt Arsenal prep center, which is great if you're not doing bulk. So like if you had your specialty rifle cartridges like 6.5 PRC, 300 Win Mag, that kind of thing. Like if you're only doing 200 cases, that thing is amazing. But when you're doing 1,000, 2,000 rounds of 5.56 at a time, it gets old quickly. So I switched to the CP, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want to keep stoking this by hand, or running the RAM by hand. And so I said, I'm going to get an auto drive. So I bought an ammo bot. I think it was a couple months later, and so I got my CP and an ammo bot, and this is it's a good amount of money to put into this machine. So I'm like, you know what? I should start a business with this. Well, that was over a year ago. And right around July, I was like, I really need to get going with this. We just moved into a new house in March, and I said, I really need to get off my behind and do this. So, I got all the business stuff taken care of, and then I started Mobius Brass with that one machine.
Why do I get the feeling that your garage does not house your car anymore?
Because that is correct. And I can tell you one thing, Joel, I want to get out of my garage so bad, because it's so messy in there. I have 2 concrete mixer tumblers, and I have a sorter, an 8 or a 9 foot long sorter. It's like, man, it's a zoo.
Now, is that where your business is set up? Is in your garage?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. You got nothing in there except work and work.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that's it. That's amazing. Now, how many machines are you running now?
For brass prep, it's still just 2. I have a third one on the way, because I'm going to get another machine to process 9. Because right now I have, I want to say, close to 100,000 rounds of 9 to process. So with the current output, I can do about 3,000 rounds an hour. So if I get 2 machines, it'll basically double that. And the 9, I can't keep the 9 on the shelves. In fact, I just started doing back orders on 9, and it already sold out. So I need to get more throughput.
And that's something that probably we should talk about, is the fact that you're sitting on 100,000 rounds that need to be processed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not an issue of brass not being available. It's an issue of keeping an eye on the website and getting it as quickly as you can, or submitting a back order in order to get the brass. It's not that the brass is hiding somewhere and that you can't get it. The issue is that everybody and your grandmother is trying to get brass, and if you haven't essentially saved your spot in line by getting a back order in, then you're not going to get it. It's going to go faster than it can be produced.
And I've been pretty studious with keeping brass, because a lot of guys they're asking me for unprocessed brass, and it's not economical for me to buy brass by the ton. And let me back up. Brass prices right now, I'm sure are just off the scale.
Yep.
And I've actually had a couple guys tell me that unprocessed, and the term once fired it's a misnomer, but range brass off of a range, there's people that are paying like 5 cents a piece for range brass. That's just raw 9mm range brass. That's nothing's been done to it. And when I heard that people are paying 5 cents a round for that, I can't charge that, because that's ridiculous. I charge 8 cents. 8 cents for fully processed brass, and 5 cents for unprocessed. Like, typically, if a Republican was president and we didn't have all this wonderfulness going on, I think the average price of raw 9 would be between 2.5 and 3 cents a piece. So it's more than doubled for unprocessed brass. It's amazing. I've never seen anything like this.
Shooting straight and always right on target. This is the GunGuyTV podcast.
One more way that you can help support GunGuyTV is to support us by going to Practical Defense Systems for your security officer training. If you're in California and you're interested in getting into security, or you already work in the security industry, we're a state-licensed security officer training facility. We're basically a vocational school, and that's the company that my wife and I own. So if you do your initial licensing training to get into security, or your continuing education that you have to do every year with Practical Defense Systems, not only do you support that company, not only are you going to get good training, not only are you going to save money, but you're also going to help support GunGuyTV. So check us out at Practical Defense Systems. You'll find a link in the description, or you can just go to pdsclasses.com. Now let's get back to the interview with Kyle. What do you attribute the craziness of buying ammo to? Why are people out buying ammo, buying everything as fast as they can get it?
It was honestly the best resource that I've seen on this subject is the CEO of Federal, or the parent company that owns Federal. They basically said that the gun market has been so heavily inundated with new gun buyers, and they said that if 7 million gun buyers bought 2 boxes of ammo, it would just be some astronomical amount of ammo that would need to be produced. So I think it's a combination of that, and it's a combination of the concern that people have for, especially with what we're getting out of Congress and the White House with mandatory gun buybacks and this whole malarkey with manufacturers' liability that just came out a couple days ago. And I mean, that doesn't really concern the average citizen, but any kind of gun bill will cause a panic. And I remember very clearly after Newtown happened in 2013, this is when I was first getting into guns, and I was just like gobsmacked at how quickly the shelves emptied. It was, oh man. And here in California, it took almost 4 years for the ammo market to recover. So I'm genuinely curious how long it will take for this go around to rectify itself.
I have a feeling it'll be a while. During that time in 2013, my company, Practical Defense Systems, we had a sort of a back channel for ammo, and we had gotten in the habit, because we qualify security officers throughout the state, we'd gotten in the habit of stocking a lot of ammunition, and then we had pistols for them to borrow and use in case they didn't own their own. But the ranges that we qualified these folks at were routinely completely dry. I mean, they didn't have one round of anything, and it was really shocking how difficult it was for ranges to acquire ammo. Had we not made the decision we made when we made it to stockpile ammunition like crazy, we would have been forced out of business. There were a number of companies that were. To your point, there were a couple of news stories that were just out today I found interesting. One is in Breitbart by John Nolte, and it's an opinion piece. And it says, Great Americans, this is the title, Great Americans are buying guns with Biden's stimulus check.
I can't think. Yeah, that's the best title I've ever heard in a news story.
What else are you going to do with a stimulus check, right? If you go out and buy a gun. And so that's what folks are doing. And apparently Nolte went out and interviewed a bunch of gun store owners, and they're telling him that this is what happened with the last stimulus check. And so they're anticipating a lot of sales increase based upon the stimulus checks that just went out. And then there's another story that was in Bearing Arms today. California gun sales skyrocketing. Media asks why.
Yeah, I can't imagine why.
Gee.
Yeah, I bet it's almost like people are concerned.
Yeah, I wonder why that could be. Shocking. Yeah. Well, now where do you think, I saw a couple things on your website. First of all, I want to repeat, Kyle's got brass. It's just a matter of getting your order in and making sure you get that back order in, or just watching the website and pouncing on it when you see it, because right now people are buying things just as fast as they're available. And so you want to get in there and get your order in at Mobius Brass, and you'll get brass. The problem is the other components, most notably primers. I looked today, and I could not find primers anywhere except for 209 shotgun primers. I found those here and there. Not a whole lot of them, but I found them. But anything pistol, rifle, forget about it. I couldn't find that anywhere. Powders, I'm starting to see coming back a little bit, where I'm starting to see powders, not necessarily the most popular ones, but nevertheless, if you've got good loading data and you check and see if these powders work, you might be able to get powder. The problem that I'm seeing, and bullets, by the way, you can get bullets at one place or another. It may not be exactly what you're looking for, but if you're looking for range bullets, there's plenty of those around. But primers are tough. And yet I saw on your website small pistol primers. What's that? Used ones. What's that about?
So I'm glad you asked about that, because I get a lot of questions about that. A lot of guys. So when the last round, or the last time that there was a massive shortage like this, guys became, the ingenuity was always there, but they put that ingenuity to use. And what they were doing is they were actually pulling the anvils out of primers, tapping the dent out of the primer cup, putting their own homemade priming compound in there, and then putting the anvil back in. So they were reloading primers. there are recipes online to reload or to make your own priming compound. I have never tried that. I don't have that much time, but I have seen it done.
And how reliable are those?
Ooh, asking the real questions.
Probably depends on who's making them and how
yeah,
well they
I would
make
imagine
them.
so. I think it determines, or it depends on how attentive to detail the loader is. Because I mean, when you're talking a tenth of an ounce, a tenth of a grain of priming compound, I would imagine that the chemistry makes a pretty big deal, especially when in small primers.
I saw a video of a guy who was using caps, the little caps from a cap gun, and he was cutting out the caps, and he figured out with a couple of different primers he was using that if he put in I think it was either 2 or 3 caps, I don't know, but you could probably find the video on YouTube somewhere. If he put 2 or 3 caps in there and then was very studious about the way he reset the anvil, that they were fairly reliable. He got about 9 out of 10 of them to fire, which was a very ingenious. So he was telling people, make sure you stock up on these rolls of caps, and holy smoke, it's so there's, as my grandfather used to say, where there's a will, there's a relative. No, that's not how that goes. Where there's a will, there's a way.
There's a way, exactly.
And people will find a way. But I found it interesting that you had small pistol primers, used ones for sale. That's a new one on me.
If I got another one for you. I've had several guys actually ask me for spent 22 cases. And I'm
That's interesting.
Yeah. I thought it was to reload 22, which I guess if you had enough time, it would be, you could reload 22. There's a lot of labor that goes into it, but I have since found out that I think what guys are doing with them is they're making them into jackets and casting their own bullets. So they're taking the 22 case and forming it into a jacket and then pouring lead in behind it.
How interesting is that? I thought you were going to tell me they were trying to extract the remainder, if any, of the priming compound, but I wouldn't think there is any. Once it's burnt, it's burnt. So there's nothing left in there. But that's interesting. Well, they're making their own jackets for their own bullets. Well, like I said, where there's a will, there's a way, and people will find a way. What do you see happening right now? I mean, you said you don't know how this will pan out or how long it will take, but you probably have your finger on the pulse of the primer market and the component market better than I. So what are your thoughts?
I have a couple theories on that. I personally think that, I think a lot of things, but I think that based on what I've researched, that Wolf and I don't think Tula sells their primers here, but Wolf primers are going to be imported again, at least because I spoke with Wolf, not in any meaningful and industrial way. Just as a customer, and they said that they were looking to be importing them again this month. And I have a feeling that what happened the last time in 2013, 2014 is a lot of companies were putting back orders in they were back ordering with like 5 different companies, and they were back ordering for the entire amount that they needed. So when one of those companies delivered, they canceled the other 4 back orders. And I actually haven't seen any Wolf primers ever since then. So I'm loath to say that I think that they're going to be importing them again, but they told me that they were thinking about importing them again. So I hope that with Wolf importing primers again, that it will kind of ease the strain of the need for primers. And the other problem that I think is that a lot of times, this isn't really, I've never seen this really in our, in the gun world, but with like sneakers and, high demand fashion items, there's a lot of people that use shopping bots or I don't know what else you'd call them. They're like add to cart bots or whatever, where they'll go in and they'll buy like let's say that Bass Pro puts 10,000 primers up. Well, they'll program something to go in and buy all 10,000 of those primers before anybody else has a chance to, as soon as they're in stock. So that it's constantly hitting the web page and hitting refresh. And this is all automated. This is all by a bot. Well, in recent months, I've noticed that, at least from the people that I've talked to, that those bots that they're getting rejected because the traffic on the web page I don't know if it's a firewall or whatever, but there's an appliance blocking that traffic on the web page. So scalpers that are taking these primers, buying 10,000 of them and throwing them up on Gunbroker are being stopped, which is a excellent thing. Like I was kind of shocked that these people were getting away with it, because this is all secondhand stuff. I don't know anybody that does this, but it's good to see that. It's good to see that companies are being responsible and letting people who otherwise wouldn't have access to these primers get these primers.
You're listening to the GunGuyTV podcast. Please pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
One thing I want to remind you of very quickly before we get back to the interview is that this podcast, like all the others, is split into two sections. The first half hour is available free on your favorite podcast player and on the various video platforms like YouTube and so on. The second half an hour is available only on Patreon. So if you'd like to hear the entire interview, please come join us on Patreon. You'll find a link in the description. You can support GunGuyTV that way and get a lot of content that you don't get anywhere else. It's exclusive only to Patreon patrons. Or you can just go to Patreon, for that matter, and just search for GunGuyTV. All right, back to the interview. You know, Rick Travis at the California Rifle and Pistol Association and I were talking about this, and he was saying that he had actually been in conversation with several, apparently, of the larger firearms ammunition manufacturers. Mm-hmm. And what they had told him is that the big deal with primers right now is they really have to use their primers to make their ammunition, and they don't have extra primers to put out there for sale for the reloading market.
Yep.
What do you think of that view? Do you think that's accurate?
I 100% agree with that. Yep, because and I've actually heard that from several guys that when they're not shops, they're factories of ammunition. When the factories that buy primers by the pallet can't get those primers, there's a problem. And I think that's going to cause, if well, I'm sure it already has caused a lot of stress for some ranges. And I've heard stories of startup companies that make ammunition in a substandard way, and the result of that ammunition being fired shows. I've heard more than one occasion that some startup companies that nobody's heard of before have doubles or double charges or squibs. And so I 100% agree with that. So you get people who shouldn't really be making ammo because they're just doing it to make the money right now, who are making ammo to fill that void because they have access to certain primers. But, on the wholesale market, yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Well, you've talked about the investment that you've made just in machinery in your own shop. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting here while you were talking about it because I'm fairly aware of the cost of Dillon stuff. Mm-hmm. And my wallet was about to have a heart attack because you're telling me the various things you bought. But even when you think about that as an individual starting a small business, that's a Herculean task to dedicate the funds to go buy additional machinery, get the machinery set up, get it running, and so on. But when you're an ammo manufacturer,
oh boy,
it's a different proposition because not only are you investing billions of dollars in new new equipment, you have to have a place to put that equipment. Mm-hmm. So you've got to have now warehouse space. You've got to have people to run that equipment. You've got to go through the licensing to be able to make the ammunition because some of those things, like primers or so on, are considered hazmat. And the making of ammunition has a lot of various and sundry regulations associated with it, both federal and state, and probably local. So there's a lot of stuff. It's not a flip the switch thing. So these manufacturers can say, "Oh, gee, there's a run on ammunition right now, and we can't make it fast enough. Let's just crank on a couple more machines." It doesn't work that way, does it?
Nope. That's absolutely correct. And actually, what I've seen is it's not even companies that you would normally associate with the ammunition industry. It's companies like, whoa, they make ammo, and it actually turns out that they're not making their own ammo. They're importing it, or they're doing something where they're getting it at a reduced cost, or they're not making it at all, and they're just importing it from somewhere else. So it's really kind of interesting. It's a very interesting dynamic, and it's something that as a consumer, I don't really think that people think about that, especially because when I was just getting into guns, like I didn't think about where this ammo came from. It just showed up at Walmart or whatever, and there it was. But there's a lot that goes into making that, especially on the liability side of things. That's why I don't make ammo, because there's only one word for it. The dedication it takes to run these machines with a consistency that I would be comfortable with putting my name on it it's the learning curve alone for brass prep is pretty steep. Now, when you add priming, throwing a charge, seating a bullet, crimping, and then chamber checking everything that leaves, that's just a lot more work and it's a lot more liability. And I think that when you look at, how Federal makes their ammo, they have, I don't know what kind of machines they have, but, above Dillon, there's Camdexes, and Camdexes they're nice, but they're very expensive. But yeah, there's a significant investment in, in components and machines, and there's a lot to be learned. And so I think that a lot of times people who are just doing ammunition or making ammunition for the quick buck of it aren't necessarily going through the correct way of making all this stuff and just sending ammo out the door that has no business being out there.
It's an interesting thing when you think about the number of rounds that are made every year by ammunition manufacturers and the astronomically low incidence of accidents that harm anyone. If you really think about it, any given round, if made improperly, can blow a gun up. Somebody loses a digit, loses an eye, or perhaps loses a life. And yet these manufacturers pump this ammunition out at incredible rates.
Yeah, it is
and
a
yet
miracle.
There's such an attention to detail and such an attention to quality control that you can confidently go buy a box of ammunition, go to the range, and be assured with almost 100% accuracy, not quite, but almost, that every time you press the trigger, you're going to do so safely. And that's an astounding thing that requires a tremendous investment. I think the other thing, too, if you think about it, is these types of runs on things are often temporary. So if I'm a business owner, which I am, and I'm saying to myself, okay, in order to handle this, if we really want to crank up enough to do it, I've got to invest a lot of money, hire people, get a location, go through this licensing and so on. And then what happens if I do that and then this rush wanes?
Yep.
What do I do with all that equipment? What do I do with all that money we spent? What do I do with all the people we hired? How do I explain that to our stockholders that I blew all this money and now we've got all this stuff sitting around idle and we have to lay off all these folks? So I wonder if that doesn't enter into the calculation as to why they don't do it as well.
Well, I think honestly, and I should be clear with this, is that a lot of times what I've seen is it's not necessarily companies, it's actually individuals that are they're selling ammo illegally. I've seen it actually before on Gunbroker where people actually admit that they're selling their own reloads, and obviously you need an FFL06 to make ammunition and sell it, and you hear stories about people buying reloads at gun shows or whatever, and the attention to detail is not there. So if you have a guy who's sitting on 30,000 primers and has enough components to make 20,000 rounds of 9, sometimes he might just do that and try to get away with it on Gunbroker. And I was just floored. I keep hearing stories about this, and it's like, man,
those will potentially blow you up. That's the difference between what I was talking about before was ammunition companies. We're talking about Federal and Remington and Hornady and so on. These companies make so much ammunition and it doesn't blow you up.
Yeah.
But you're right. I've been reloading forever, and when I'm loading, I don't have a radio on. If somebody wants to come in and talk to me, I stop what I'm doing, because if you're not paying attention, you can screw up and you can double charge a case. You can have a squib. You can do yourself some damage. I actually know a guy who was walking across his garage with a tube full of primers for his Dillon and stumbled on something and dropped it, and it went pop. Unfortunately, nobody was hurt, but the ears were ringing, And so there's stuff in there that can really hurt you if you're not paying attention. So if you're buying, I would urge folks, I know when I reload ammunition and I load it, I know I can take it to the range and it's safe. But I don't know that about the other guy, and so I don't use other people's loads. Forget it. If I'm buying ammunition, it's got to be factory new ammunition. If I'm loading it myself, I'm fine with that. But other than that, forget about it.
I concur 100%. I would honestly say that's a good mantra to shoot by. Especially, don't shoot anyone else's reloads except your own. That's really the bottom line of it, because I mean, I'm sure you've heard stories as well, just of mix-ups. You know, somebody ends up putting tight grip in a rifle case, and then, oh man.
Oh, no, I haven't just heard the stories. Remember, I've been an instructor for a couple of decades.
Oh, that's right.
I've been a law enforcement instructor and security instructor for decades. I've taught thousands and thousands of people how to shoot. We absolutely banned the use of any reloaded ammunition on the range during any classes. But I have attended courses where that wasn't the case and seen accidents. Now, fortunately, in all the ones I've seen, while guns were destroyed and certainly, you say, gee, that just scared me out of 10 years of my life. Nobody was seriously hurt. Nobody lost a digit or lost an eye or whatever. Mm-hmm. It was more shocking and alarming than anything else. But there certainly are instances where people get seriously injured. And so, yeah, that's a great rule. Don't shoot other people's reloads. Just use your own. And don't go on GunBroker. My advice is don't go on GunBroker and buy ammunition that you cannot guarantee is factory new ammunition. If you want reloads, then load them yourself.
Agreed.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time for the public free part of the podcast available on your favorite podcast player. However, the next half an hour of the interview is available on Patreon. So if you're on Patreon, I want you to stick with me. We'll get started with that in just a second. If you're listening on your favorite podcast player or you're listening on YouTube or one of the video distribution channels, then thank you very much for all of your support. And wherever you go, whatever you do, stay safe.
You've been listening to the GunGuyTV podcast.